Welcome to Mindful Moments. Nourish your mind on the go. This audio uses AI narration to present our original book analysis. Imagine if philosophy wasn't just those dusty old books, but a vibrant debate that actually shaped nations, inspired revolutions.
Right.
That's the kind of world we're going to be diving into today when we look at Frederick Copleston's A History of Philosophy, modern philosophy from the post-Kantian idealists to Marx, Kierkegaard, and Nietzsche.
Oh, it's a dense book. It really is. It's a tough one, but it is like a key to understanding, I think, the intellectual currents that still shape the world today.
Absolutely. And so our mission today is to try to distill some of the key insights from this book and try to make even the most complex philosophical ideas clear and engaging, and help you to sort of be able to trace the evolution of thought from the idealistic heights of Hegel to the radical critiques of Schopenhauer and Nietzsche.
Yeah, and what I think is so fascinating about this particular period in philosophy is how these debates weren't confined to like ivory towers. They really spilled out into the real world, influenced politics and art, and even the way people understood like their own lives.
It's amazing to think about, it's like a chain reaction of brilliant minds, each one responding to the challenges and possibilities of their time.
Exactly. Yeah. And to really understand like the significance of all these thinkers, we need to start with the figure that kind of sets the stage for this whole era. Immanuel Kant.
Kant, the great skeptic. He really shook up the philosophical world with his critiques of pure reason.
Oh, absolutely. He raised such profound questions about the limits of human knowledge, the nature of reality itself. And it was his successors, these German idealists, who took up these questions and tried to answer them in some really bold new ways.
So these idealists like Fichte, Schelling, Hegel, how did they build on Kant's legacy?
Well, they took his ideas about the importance of the mind, like in shaping our experience of reality. And they ran with them. They ultimately argued that reality itself is, in a sense, a product of thought or reason.
Wow. So that's such a radical departure from traditional views. So they weren't just theorizing about the mind. They were trying to explain the nature of everything.
Precisely. And each of these idealists constructed their own really intricate system, their own grand vision of the universe, with the human mind playing a central role.
So let's start with Johann Gottlieb Fichte. He's a philosopher who really embodies this idealist ambition. And his central idea is this concept of the absolute ego. Could you unpack that for us a little bit?
So Fichte believes that at the very heart of reality, there is a universal consciousness, this absolute ego, and it, in a way, projects the world as a stage for moral action.
So it's not just, I think, therefore I am. It's more like, this universal mind thinks, therefore the world is.
Right.
That's kind of a mind-blowing concept.
It is. And for Fichte, this has some pretty radical implications. Because if reality is ultimately grounded in this moral ego, then the state, as an expression of the collective will, has a huge responsibility in shaping individuals towards ethical behavior.
That's a far cry from the idea of individual liberty that we often associate with modern thought.
It is. Fichte actually advocated for a planned economy, a form of national socialism, believing that a state guided by these idealist principles could foster true moral development.
So he was wrestling with this fundamental question of how to balance individual freedom with the need for social order and moral guidance.
Yeah, and it's a question that, continues to resonate in our own political debates today.
Absolutely. But Fichte wasn't the only one exploring the implications of Kant's ideas. Friedrich Wilhelm Joseph von Schelling.
Oh, yeah. Another key figure in German idealism. He developed a really fascinating philosophy of nature.
Schelling, the philosopher who saw nature as slumbering spirit, right?
Exactly. He didn't view the natural world as just like a separate inert substance, but as the unconscious striving of spirit towards consciousness. It's as if nature itself is yearning to awaken, to realize its full potential.
That's a beautiful image. So how does this slumbering spirit actually manifest itself in the world?
Well, Schelling uses this concept of potencies to explain how nature unfolds in these stages, each stage representing a higher degree, the absolute self-expression.
It's like the acorn striving to become the oak tree, but on a cosmic scale.
Yes.
Each stage a step closer to full self-awareness.
A great analogy. And for Schelling, art becomes the point where this unconscious striving towards consciousness is most fully realized. It becomes the ultimate synthesis, the place where the absolute reveals itself most clearly.
That's a really interesting take on art. It's not just about aesthetics. It's about glimpsing something profound about the nature of reality itself.
Precisely. Schelling's philosophy might just change how you view your next museum visit.
Now, speaking of grand philosophical visions, we can't talk about German idealism without addressing the elephant, or perhaps the owl, in the room, Georg Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel.
Hegel, the architect of this incredibly ambitious system that attempts to explain everything, from the smallest grain of sand to the grand sweep of history.
He's notorious for his dense and complex writing. What are some of the key ideas that we need to grasp to understand his philosophy?
Well, one central concept is his notion of the dialectic: thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. This is the engine that drives the development of both thought and reality itself, according to Hegel.
So it's not a linear progression of ideas, but more like a dance, where ideas clash, contradict each other, and ultimately resolve into a higher unity.
Exactly. And this dialectical process, for Hegel, it plays out on this vast historical scale. He sees history as having a direction, a purpose, culminating in the realization of freedom.
That's a pretty bold claim. So he's saying that history isn't just a series of random events. It's a grand march of reason towards a specific goal.
That's the essence of his philosophy of history, yeah. And it had a huge impact on political philosophy. He saw the state as the highest expression of objective spirit, the embodiment of this historical progress towards freedom.
So for Hegel, the state isn't just a necessary evil. It's actually like a crucial part of our collective journey towards self-realization.
That's right. Of course, this view has been subject to a lot of debate and criticism, particularly in light of 20th century history.
It definitely raises some important questions about the role of the state in individual lives and the potential dangers of subordinating individual freedom to some grand historical narrative.
Absolutely. And as we'll see, Hegel's grand system didn't go unchallenged. In fact, some of the most influential thinkers of the 19th century emerged precisely as critics of this idealist vision.
So we're about to enter a new chapter in this philosophical journey, a chapter that challenges the very foundations of what we've discussed so far.
That's right. Thinkers like Arthur Schopenhauer, Søren Kierkegaard, and Friedrich Nietzsche. They offer these powerful critiques of Hegelian idealism, each in their own unique way. And their ideas continue to resonate with us today, forcing us to confront these fundamental questions about meaning, purpose, the limits of human knowledge.
This is where things get really interesting. But before we dive into those critiques, let's take a quick break. When we return, Reggio will explore how these thinkers challenge the idealistic visions of Fichte, Schelling, and Hegel, offering alternative perspectives on the nature of reality and the human condition.
Welcome back to our deep dive into modern philosophy.
Okay, so before the break, we were in the thick of it with the German idealists and their grand systems. But now we are going to be looking at some folks that challenge those systems.
Right.
And I think that's really interesting. It's like we've been, scaling this mountain of idealism, and now we're about to kind of descend into this valley of very different perspectives.
I love that analogy, yeah. Yeah, where should we begin our descent?
Well, I think a good place to start would be with Arthur Schopenhauer. He offered a starkly contrasting vision to the, optimism and rationalism of Hegel.
Right, yeah, Schopenhauer. He's the one who saw the world not as the unfolding of reason, but as driven by this, blind, irrational force that he called the will.
So instead of this grand march of progress towards freedom, we're kind of caught up in this chaotic struggle for existence.
Exactly. And for Schopenhauer, this will leads to this cycle of desire and striving that ultimately results in, suffering and disillusionment. It's a pretty pessimistic view of the human condition.
It definitely challenges that idea that history is moving towards some happy ending, I'll say that.
Yeah, absolutely. But Schopenhauer did offer a way out of this endless cycle of suffering.
Yeah, okay, so what was that?
Well, he saw art as a temporary escape from the tyranny of the will. By immersing ourselves in art, we can momentarily detach from our desires and experience, a kind of aesthetic contemplation that brings a sense of peace.
So it's not about finding solutions or achieving goals. It's more about finding these moments of transcendence through beauty.
That's a good way to put it. It's a very different way of thinking about the purpose of art, right? It's not as a reflection of reason or progress, but as this kind of refuge from the relentless striving of the will.
That is really interesting. Okay, so let's move on to Søren Kierkegaard. He was another critic of Hegelian idealism.
Right.
And what was his main problem with Hegel's system?
Well, Kierkegaard was very concerned with the individual and the subjective experience of faith. He felt that Hegel's grand system with its focus on objective spirit and historical progress, it failed to capture the unique struggles and choices that define a human life.
So for Kierkegaard, you're not defined by your place in society or some predetermined plan.
Right.
It's about the choices you make, the leaps of faith that you take, that truly matter.
Exactly. He believed that faith in particular, could not be reduced to our rational system. It's a personal commitment, a leap into the unknown. It's a decision made in the face of uncertainty.
So instead of trying to fit individuals into this grand historical narrative, Kierkegaard really emphasized their freedom to create their own meaning.
Exactly. But that freedom for Kierkegaard, it comes with a burden. It's the responsibility to live authentically, to make choices that align with your values, even in the absence of absolute certainty.
Okay, now let's talk about the philosophical firebrand of the group, Friedrich Nietzsche.
Nietzsche, the philosopher who dared to declare the death of God. His ideas are just as challenging as they are influential. He really questioned the foundations of Western morality and religion and urges us to think for ourselves and create our own values in this world without any inherent purpose.
He was certainly not afraid to shake things up. So what did he actually propose in place of these traditional value systems?
Well, Nietzsche's philosophy is complex and often, I think, misunderstood. But one of his key concepts is this idea of the will to power. And this isn't about dominating others. It's about this fundamental life force, this drive to overcome limitations, to strive for excellence, to become what you are capable of becoming.
So it's not about giving up on values altogether. It's about recognizing that we have the power, and I guess also the responsibility, to create our own values.
That's a good way to put it, yeah. Nietzsche challenges us to confront the reality that there's no cosmic rule book, no preordained plan. We are the ones who give meaning to our lives.
That's, it's daunting, but it's also incredibly liberating.
It is.
We're free from the constraints of traditional morality, but also faced with this challenge of forging our own path in this world that doesn't really have any easy answers.
Exactly. And that's what I think makes engaging with these thinkers so rewarding.
Yeah.
They don't give us, simple solutions, but they push us to grapple with the most fundamental questions of human existence, like questions of meaning, purpose, the nature of reality itself.
It's like they've given us a new set of lenses through which to view the world that allows us to see things from different angles, to question things that we take for granted, and consider possibilities we hadn't really imagined before.
And that's the essence of what philosophy is all about, right? Expanding our horizons, deepening our understanding, challenging us to live more thoughtfully and deliberately.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive,
Yeah.
but I think we've only just scratched the surface of these complex and fascinating thinkers. I mean, there's so much more to explore in their work.
Absolutely. And that's what I find so exciting about philosophy. It's not, like a destination. It's a journey, an ongoing exploration. There's always more to learn, more to question, more to discover.
And speaking of exploring further, our guide for this intellectual adventure has been Frederick Copleston's A History of Philosophy. And he's done a remarkable job, I think, of weaving together the threads of this complex story, showing how these seemingly disparate thinkers are actually engaged in this vibrant, interconnected conversation.
He's given us the historical context and the conceptual tools to appreciate, the nuances and significance of their ideas.
So if you're feeling inspired to explore these ideas further, we highly recommend diving into Copleston's book.
You'll find it challenging.
Yeah.
But I think ultimately a very rewarding read, one that will deepen your understanding of both philosophy and yourself.
And for those of you who want to continue this journey of intellectual exploration, be sure to subscribe to the channel for more mindful moments. You can find a link to purchase Copleston's book in the show notes. We'll also include links to some other resources that can help you delve deeper into the world of modern philosophy.
Remember, the value of philosophy, it isn't just in finding answers. It's in learning to ask the right questions, to engage in this thoughtful dialogue, and cultivate a lifelong love of learning.
So keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep nourishing your mind. Until next time, thanks for joining us on this deep dive.